The terrifying consequences of judging people by their clothes and bank balance were felt to the bone by this arrogant princess of New York. Her atrocious behavior toward a mere laborer on a dusty Montana ranch turned out to be the biggest mistake of her life. Who was that laborer? And why did the girl's luxurious lifestyle suddenly suffer a massive blow? You must watch this shocking story to the end. A penthouse in a skyscraper located on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, New York City. Through the massive glass windows, the entire city skyline, Central Park, and the calm streams of the Hudson River in the distance are clearly visible. The resident of this luxurious palace is Richard Sterling, one of America's top real estate tycoons. His only daughter is Victoria Sterling. Victoria grew up in a world where nothing exists beyond designer brands, private jets, Michelin-starred restaurant meals, and high society parties. To her, a person's identity is determined by their bank balance, the brand of their clothes, and their social standing. People who fail to meet these criteria are practically invisible in Victoria's eyes. One late afternoon, Richard Sterling was sipping coffee in his drawing room. Victoria had just returned from a fashion show. She was wearing the latest collection from Gucci and holding an exclusive Louis Vuitton bag.
Victoria, we are going to Montana next week,
Richard said calmly. Victoria frowned at her father.
Montana? Dad, are you kidding me? What are we going to do in that dusty, wild place? There isn't even a proper 5-star hotel there.
Richard smiled slightly and said,
We are thinking of buying a massive ranch called Whispering Pines. The place is absolutely perfect for building an ecotourism resort. And I want you to come with me. You should know that there is a world beyond just glass and concrete, which is where the real raw materials for our business come from.
Dad, please, I can't waste my time going among those cowboys and farmers. My skincare routine and diet will be completely ruined. I have no topics to discuss with those low-class people.
Annoyance and arrogance dripped from Victoria's voice. But Richard was adamant this time. After much arguing, Victoria finally had to surrender to her father's stubbornness. The next morning, the Sterling Corporation's private jet took off from New York, heading toward Bozeman, Montana. When they arrived a few hours later, the scenery had completely changed. Instead of skyscrapers, there were rugged mountains, vast green meadows, and massive pine forests all around. From Bozeman Airport, they headed toward the ranch in a black Range Rover. The natural beauty on both sides of the road was enough to mesmerize anyone. As the sunlight hit Montana's rugged mountains, the entire scene looked like a high-contrast frame from a Hollywood movie. But to Victoria, none of this held any value. She sat in annoyance, blasting the car's AC at full speed with AirPods stuffed in her ears. A few hours later, they reached the Whispering Pines Ranch, a massive wooden gate, horse stables all around, and the earthy smell of damp soil. As soon as Victoria stepped out of the car, the bottom of her $2,000 Prada heels sank slightly into the mud. "Oh my God, disgusting!" Victoria screamed. "How do people live in this pile of garbage?" Richard told his daughter to calm down and went inside to speak with the manager. Victoria, fuming with anger, began looking around. Suddenly, her eyes fell on the back of the stable. There, a young man was working on the engine of an old Ford truck. He was wearing dirty blue denim jeans and a simple flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. There were grease stains on his hands and face, and sweat was dripping down his forehead. But there was a strange, intense focus in his work. Victoria walked closer. To her, this boy was merely a common mechanic or ranch hand. At that exact moment, the boy pulled hard on a heavy wrench from under the truck, and mud splattered from beside the truck tire, landing right on Victoria's white trousers and expensive shoes. "Hey, are you blind? Do you have no sense? Do you know how much these shoes cost? More than a petty laborer like you earns a whole year?" The young man calmly put the wrench down. Wiping the grease off his hands with an old cloth, he turned toward Victoria. There was a strange serenity on his face. His eyes were sharp but calm. Showing no anger, he said in a very normal voice, "I am sorry, ma'am. I didn't realize you were standing so close. The ground is a bit softer on this side of the ranch." Victoria grew even angrier hearing his words. Sorry? What am I supposed to do with your sorry? Uncultured, uneducated people like you have no manners. You only know how to toil like donkeys, but you don't even have the class to know how to speak to people. Clean this up right now. The boy stared into Victoria's eyes for a moment. There was no fear or guilt in his eyes, only a kind of deep pity. He walked forward slowly, wet a clean towel with water, bent down and gently wiped the mud off Victoria's shoes. Finishing the job, he stood up and said calmly, "Don't be so afraid of dirt and mud, ma'am. The skyscrapers of your city stand on the foundation of this very mud and dirt. The soil you are calling dirty is actually the true foundation of life, and respect cannot be bought with clothes or money. It has to be earned." Hearing these words, Victoria was literally stunned. A mere ranch laborer was lecturing her on philosophy. Her ego took a massive hit. "Shut up. Don't try to lecture me. Learn to stay in your limits." Saying this, Victoria stomped away. But even as she left, the young man's calm voice and words kept echoing in her ears. The boy, whose name was Julian, just smiled faintly. He went back to working on his truck. The next morning, Richard Sterling was busy in a meeting with the local mayor and other businessmen. Victoria had nothing to do. To kill her boredom, she decided to go horseback riding. She had learned to ride horses at an exclusive riding club in New York when she was younger, but she had no idea about the monumental difference between riding a horse in an indoor stadium and riding in the wild, open environment of Montana. She took a spirited black horse from the stable and headed out without telling anyone. Crossing the vast valley, she headed toward the forest. Although the immense scale and wild beauty of the place fascinated her for a moment, she quickly lost her way. Checking her mobile network, she saw there was no signal. Meanwhile, the weather suddenly began to worsen afternoon. Montana's weather is highly unpredictable. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and sharp, biting winds and thunderstorms began. Frightened by the sound of thunder, Victoria's horse suddenly reared on its hind legs and began acting wild. Victoria lost control and was thrown off the horse's back to the ground. She hit her head and hurt her hand. The terrified horse galloped deep into the forest and disappeared. Victoria sat on the ground, groaning in pain. Darkness was descending all around and it started to rain. Her expensive jacket was covered in mud. She started shivering from fear and the cold. She realized that there was no one here to help her. Her immense wealth, her high status, her father's vast power, nothing could save her in this deep forest today. She broke down, sobbing. At that very moment, the sound of horse hooves could be heard in the distance through the heavy rain. Piercing the darkness, the beam of a powerful flashlight fell on her. "Ma'am, are you okay?" It was that familiar, calm voice. Victoria looked up. Julian! He was sitting on a large horse, wearing a heavy raincoat. Julian quickly got off the horse and rushed over to Victoria. He held her hand and carefully helped her stand up. "I'm in so much pain! I was lost!" The sound of crying escaped Victoria's throat. Her usual arrogance had been washed away by the rain. Julian asked no questions, offered no taunts. He just said calmly, "Don't be afraid. I will take you back safely." Julian took off his own raincoat and wrapped it around Victoria. Then, carefully placing her on his horse and taking the reins himself, he started walking through the rain. Sitting on the horse's back, Victoria stared at Julian's broad shoulders. The man she had so brutally insulted yesterday, whom she had called low class, was risking his own life to save her today. He was getting drenched in this freezing cold after giving her his own raincoat. A strange sense of guilt began to bloom inside Victoria's chest. About an hour later, they returned to the ranch. Richard Sterling had been going almost crazy with worry. Seeing Victoria return safely, he breathed a sigh of relief. When Victoria returned to her room after receiving first aid, her mind kept spinning with thoughts of Julian. Why didn't the boy say anything to her? Why did he help her? The next evening, a grand gala dinner was hosted at Bozeman's most luxurious country club. At this very event, Richard Sterling would formally sign the agreement to acquire the Whispering Pines Ranch. The true owner of this ranch had stayed out of the public eye all this time. All deals were done through his lawyers, but today he would be present in person. Victoria came to the event wearing a black designer evening gown. Her physical injuries had somewhat healed, but her mental turmoil had not. The hall was crowded with the city's top businessmen, investors, and politicians. At one point during the event, Richard Sterling took the stage. Taking the microphone, he said,
Ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely delighted today. We are not just buying a piece of land, we are sharing a vision. And I would like to request the architect of this vision, the esteemed owner of Whispering Pines Ranch,
and the CEO of one of America's top green technology companies, Apex Eco Holdings,
Mr. Julian Hayes, to come up to the stage.
Victoria froze just as she was lifting her champagne glass to her lips. Julian Hayes? The name was unfamiliar, but hearing the name Julian made her heart tremble. A pin-drop silence descended over the entire hall. Seeing the person who pushed through the crowd and stepped onto the stage, Victoria's glass almost slipped from her hand. Julian, that truck mechanic, that mud-covered laborer, but today he was wearing a perfectly fitted bespoke Tom Ford suit with a vintage Rolex watch on his wrist. His walking style, his confidence, his personality, everything declared that he was the most powerful man in the room. The ground seemed to slip out from under Victoria's feet. She remembered the disgusting things she had said: low class, laborer, uncultured. She realized that Julian Hayes was no ordinary mechanic. He was a billionaire who, out of his passion and love for the soil, worked like a common laborer on his own ranch. Standing on the stage, Julian delivered an excellent speech. He spoke about nature, the soil, and human roots. Every single word of his pierced Victoria's heart like an arrow. When everyone surrounded him after the speech, Victoria hid herself in the crowd. Her head hung low in shame and remorse. Victoria couldn't sleep that night. All the pride she had learned her whole life, the arrogance of her status seemed to collapse like a house of cards. She realized that true nobility does not reside in expensive clothes or bank balances. It resides in a person's character, in their humility. Even with so much power, Julian was so down to earth, while she, growing up on her father's money, had shown such a shallow mindset. The next morning, Richard Sterling saw that Victoria was not packing her luggage.
What's the matter, Vicky? We're taking the afternoon flight back to New York today.
Victoria looked at her father and said calmly, "Dad, you go ahead. I want to stay here for a few more days." Looking into his daughter's eyes, Richard saw a strange transformation. Saying nothing, he just smiled and nodded. From that day, Victoria's life took a new turn. She packed away her designer gowns, high heels, and makeup kits in the closet. She bought simple blue jeans, t-shirts, and durable work boots from the local market. Every morning, she would wake up and head to the ranch's stables. At first, cleaning the horse stalls and hauling hay was very difficult for her. She got blisters on her hands, but she didn't give up. The other ranch workers, who once despised her as an arrogant rich girl, watched Victoria's transformation with amazement. She sat with everyone to eat simple meals, talked with a smile, and asked about their families. Victoria realized that the peace found in this simple life couldn't be found in any penthouse in Manhattan. Julian observed everything from a distance. He knew why Victoria was trying to bring about this change, but he didn't approach Victoria on his own. He was giving her the time she needed to fight her own battles. Almost 2 months passed like this. Victoria had now become as skilled as a full-fledged cowgirl. She no longer had that artificial glamour on her face, but a strange natural glow had emerged. One late afternoon, as the sun was setting, spreading a red glow across the Montana horizon, Victoria was standing near that old truck. The place had become like a sanctuary to her, the place where her false pride had died. Suddenly, hearing footsteps behind her, she turned around. Julian, wearing that same simple flannel shirt and denim. Victoria's heart skipped a beat. She sighed and said softly,
Mr. Hayes.
I'd be happy if you just called me Julian.
Victoria lowered her head and said,
I don't know if you can ever forgive me. The way I treated you and the people here is unforgivable. I used to judge people by their money. I was blind, Julian. You didn't just save me from the forest, but also from the cage of arrogance I built myself. I am so sorry.
Tears started rolling down Victoria's eyes. Julian stepped forward and wiped Victoria's tears. He said calmly,
Victoria, I forgave you the very day you wrapped my raincoat around yourself on that rainy night and accepted your vulnerability. People make mistakes, but not everyone has the courage to learn from those mistakes and change themselves. You have shown that courage. In these past 2 months, you have proven how beautiful the person inside you is.
Victoria looked at Julian with tear-filled eyes.
You really don't hate me anymore?
Julian smiled. I never hated you. Instead, I now see someone who commands respect, and maybe someone who wouldn't be too hard to love either. Hearing this, a wave of profound emotion washed over Victoria's eyes. Julian took her hand in his and said, I had no interest in that arrogant princess of Manhattan, but I don't want to lose this simple, hardworking girl of Montana. Victoria gripped Julian's hand tightly in return. She felt that what she had been searching for her entire life was hidden right in the grasp of this man who smelled of the earth. Under the vast Montana sky, amidst the rustling of pine trees, a new story began. A story with no arrogance, no boasting of false status, just the union of two people from different worlds and the triumph of true love. Victoria understood that life doesn't reside in five-star hotels. The true beauty of life is hidden close to the earth, in the simplicity of ordinary people. And thus the most beautiful transformation in the life of an arrogant city girl was complete. Friends, the story ends here. Please let us know in the comments how you like the story. To watch more amazing videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel.